to go back and like look at what we did just on that day. They could take a look at it versus like going back 3 classes, looking at color switcher and being like, oh my God, we did that on this day? No, you did only a portion of that on this day, okay? So what I want to cover is events. And there's obviously 2 really good places for events here, right? 2 places that we can do events. And one of those places that we're really going to focus in on today is the form. Both the to-do list and the color switcher have a form, right? The to-do list doesn't really let you like click on the thing, like our to-do item. We could add a click like and put a line through it. Could do that. Maybe we could do that. But we're going to do the form because the form is super important also, okay? So in our components, we have all of our, in our components folder, we have all the components that we created, right? And color list item was the last one that we created, right? That was the last one that we did, and we kind of looped over in color list. We imported some data, or we actually just created the data there. We're gonna move this eventually, but for simplicity, we just put it right here. And then we looped over it. So we did the map last time, right? Mapping touches everything in the array and returns a mutated version of the thing in the array. And so we returned a color list item component, where we passed down, what does color and key represent? What's the key word from last class? Color and key are called?
Props.
Yes, color and key are props. So I'll just put their props, all right? And props, in essence, are 1P, are like attributes, like an image URL, right? A source is equal to this image, and that's a property or an attribute. We call them props in React. That's just the terminology that they use. And this is the syntax, right? And the curly braces are needed, why? Curlies are needed, why?
JavaScript.
Yeah, because what's really being rendered inside of here is something called JSX, JavaScript and XML. And it's a combination of HTML and JavaScript. Anytime the JavaScript is being referenced, it's wrapped around curly braces. That's it. If it's normal straight up text, not wrapped in curly braces. If it is JavaScript, it's wrapped in curly braces. And this data here represents the element at that moment in the array. So as this thing loops, every time we're in a loop, data becomes the thing at that moment. Then we go to the next thing in the array, and data becomes the next thing at that moment, okay? An index is the position of the element in the array. And both of those were quite relevant for what we needed to do, right? I think when we had gone over it originally in the REPL, we weren't using index, but I put it there because I knew we would use it, and we would use it under this specific context, okay? There's other contexts to use it, but this is the one we're doing, okay? Why they need it? Because it's JavaScript. Sweet, okay. And then color list item was past that data, and we had to add the props argument there, right? And we used the props in here. We console logged it. We saw the props, and then we used it, right? So props is what? What type of thing is props? Well, this is not always an array. It's always what? Props is always a?
Object.
Object, correct, right? So it's going to be whatever was passed down. In this instance, color was passed down, and we're going to get any color. I'm just going to make up the color, gray. We knew that gray was passed down, right? Key was also passed down, and that's going to be some sort of index position, so 1, right? We know that. And if I open this up in a new window, so I click on this little icon here over on the right, and I open this up, and I go to Developer Tools, and then Option J. I was doing responsive design there before. I see here's the prop for that. Here, this one's the white circle. This one's the light green circle. Key has some information here, right? This thing looks like it's not passing down the value. It's doing some other stuff because it's React. It's magic. I don't know what happens, right? And so we passed it out. Just know that React changes things up, right? Color list passed down these two things, and React under the hood was like, oh, you gave me two things? Well, the best way to structure data is to stick it inside of an object. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to provide that object to you to use, okay? So that worked great. Now, we need to capture data, right? It only makes sense. We have here a form, and I need to type in the form and capture data, right? I ultimately want to add a color, and once that color submits, oh, does anybody remember why that happens? Ooh, that's got
The preventive.
Prevent default.
Prevent default, because the form is a form. It's got form tags. Form tags dictate that submitting a form initiates some default HTML behavior. There's no JavaScript associated with this thing yet. The form itself doesn't have any click events associated with it that we wrote, but it does, under the hood, respond to the event of submission. If you submit it, this is what happens, okay?
And Joe, and how would you add prevent default to that?
Ooh, that's what we're going to be doing. I'm glad you asked that question. That's what this is all about. So the first thing we need to do is I'm going to stop the form from doing its thing, right? Okay, so the event that we want, now we've already learned, what type of events have we learned? What events did we learn? What type of events so far? What's the most? Click, right? Click. What else?
Submit.
Submit. All right, cool. What else?
Change.
Change, right? Change was the drop down for the city picks. It was a select that when you drop down, you changed the selection. Right? You didn't submit a selection. You didn't click a section. You changed the selection. So these are the three events, right? Now we're going to use in the form, we're going to be using these two. The click event is clearly for the buttons, right? I click on a button. But in here, I'm going to be using these two events right here, okay? And with these two events, if you figure those out, you could figure click and you could do whatever you need with click, all right? So this is what we need to do. We need to add the event, right? Okay. So when we did it in jQuery, it was like, grab the DOM elements, .on, click. That was the syntax, right? So in the world of jQuery, when we did this, right? jQuery did it like, grab the element, whatever the element is, $, yada, I don't know, form, maybe, when we're doing click, button. I'm just going to do button, .on, whatever it was, submit, click, I don't know, submit maybe, and then we gave it some sort of function, right? Do the thing, right? Or I called it handle submit, right? I think that was actually the name, and I gave it that naming convention because in React, it really falls more into scope. You'll see it more in React, okay? This was how we did it in jQuery, and JavaScript was something really similar, but we never did it in plain vanilla JavaScript because it was just a waste of time to invest so much time in that when we weren't going to use it. So what we need to do is attach an event. Now, this is how we do it. Here's our DOM element, right? Our form. I'm going to do on submit. That's the event. An on submit event. Okay. Now, the on submit event, because it's a property, just like these, say text is equal to something, placeholder is equal to something, on submit must equal something. Now it's React is screaming at us because you can't leave it like this, right? It's like, hey, what the hell's going on? So we need to tell it to do something. So I'm going to give it parens. And inside of those, I'm going to give it curly braces because it's JavaScript. Okay. And I'm going to do this. 2 curly braces, forward slash fat arrow, and then I'm going to put another set of curly braces. All right. That's the structure. Let me slack that out. Okay. Move that over so you see it. Okay. That's the structure that we have. Okay. Oh, what happened? Does anyone know the name of this? What's that called?
An anonymous fat arrow function?
Anonymous fat arrow. You really nailed it there, Gary. Yeah. And I'm going to put a non-fat arrow, right? It is anonymous because it doesn't have a name, and it's fat arrow because it's got the little arrow. I'm not really sure why they called it fat arrow, but it's fat arrow. It's an anonymous fat arrow function, okay? Now this anonymous fat arrow function needs to do something, okay? It needs to call another function, okay? I mean, we could do a bunch of code in here if we want, but we really don't want to ever do it in there. We want to segment our code, separate our code. So let's put in something here called handle submit, okay? Now, if I do the curly braces, let's see what happens. Oh, React doesn't get pissed off at me. It does give me this little line like handle submit is not defined, okay? All right, there's a reason why what's that?
It's also spelled wrong.
Oh, handle, yes. Sweet, all right. So I'm getting this message. Handle submit is not defined. Why is that happening? Why is it saying it's not defined? Because it's the most obvious reason.
We haven't defined it.
All right, I'm just making sure everybody's with me. All right, we haven't defined it. So we need to go ahead and define this function, right? So I'm going to go here and define it, right? I'm going to say const, here we go, const handle submit is equal to a fat arrow. Okay. Now the error message is gone, like the warning's gone, and I have the construct of my function. So here I will select that out. Okay. Now, in order for us to prevent the event from happening, we need to pass the event into this thing.
Question, can you put that function outside of the form function?
This function outside.
Yeah. Const handle submit equals the fat arrow function. Can you do it above the form? Or you
I mean,
it
is above. Oh, well, because see this return right here?
Mm-hmm.
So let me just put here. The return indicates that what's inside is the UI to be returned. Okay? So if it's the UI, we want to kind of keep it all just HTML and any supporting JavaScript like a click event. But we don't want inside of here to return a function to the screen, like a handle submit function to the screen. It probably won't like that. And the other rule to, okay, just give me 1 second. Okay. The other rule for JSX is what when it comes to the HTML to be rendered? The golden rule for JSX is that
has to be in curly braces.
We can, all right, so, but we can only
Have
render
one top level element.
a single top level HTML element, right? That's the general rule. If I go into this return and do this, if I just put a div, right? If I do this, React screams at me because it's like, you can't do that. Both the div and the form are now siblings to one another, and you can't have that. You can only have, if I wanted to do this, I would have to take the div and wrap it around the form, which gets me back to square one, where I only have one top level element. So you don't want to put anything inside of the return that isn't the HTML structure. We need to put the handle submit or the on submit because it's the event and it has to be attached to the element. Otherwise, there's no way to like build that relationship. Okay. Now that we handle it, I just want to do this. I want to make sure that this works. So all I ever do is this: console log, handle, submit. I call this baby steps. I had my day class do this all day. I was like, what's the first thing you do? You put a console log in there to make sure that it console logs, right? I want to test this out. I'm going to go in here and I am going to submit. Oh, look. Now the page refreshes immediately because the form refreshes, right? So if I do click on it, you'll see it come here really quickly, and then it refreshes. And then the page shows me all the other data because the form is doing what a form does. So the fact that you learned forms in jQuery didn't change in React. The forms act the same way. We are under the same constraints. And that constraint is to prevent the default. Now, I need to pass the handle submit the event. I'm just going to use the shorthand for E. A lot of the times you're going to see either E or EVT or event. One of the three. I always like just to do E because I don't have to type a lot, right? EVT, 3 characters, means I might screw it up someplace else. I put E. Now, I want to use this.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Do you have to put something inside of there, or does it just understand what the event is?
So we need to pass the event to it. That's a good question. That's where I was going. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put E here and E there. So when handle submit calls, it passes the event to the handle submit. Okay? So by doing this, we now have the event in here, which means we should be able to do this. E dot prevent default. Right? That should work. I can test it out and see if it does work. Okay? This is our whole function right now. Excuse me. That's our whole function. I'm going to test it out. And clear my page. I'm going to submit. Clear this. Look, no page refresh. See? Nothing. Now I can also console log the event too. So I can just be like handle submit E to indicate the event, and we can see what happens with the event. Watch this. Clear this. Do you see this? See how it says synthetic event? Now in React is adding this layer, right? React adds a layer on top of the JavaScript. It adds a layer on top of the DOM. And React says, oh, you want a submit event? Well, I'm going to take the normal submit event and I'm going to add a React layer on top of it. And I'm going to create a synthetic event. I am the middle person between the real event and you clicking on the event. Has to go through me. Oh, man, I'm sorry. So that's why it's called a synthetic event. Okay. Now we're going to finish with it, but it's 9 o'clock. Apparently my throat's killing me. So we'll take our break now so I can fix what's going on. And yeah, so let's take a break. Take 10 minutes. Let's come back at 10 minutes after. You lose 1 minute, but just easier to do that. So break time. Come back at 10 minutes past. All right. Just going to go fill my water bottle up. Clear my throat a little bit. All right. We're good. All right. All right. So we have our handle submit and we're grabbing the event and we're preventing default, right? Okay. Now, one thing that we need to do here, I mean, we got the event, we're able to submit the events. The next thing would be to grab the input, right? Where is the input and how do we grab this input when somebody types? Okay, so in jQuery, we kind of combine the two, right? The handle submit would have grabbed the input and then done something with it, right? Pass that input to a create li event, and then the li would have been created, right? Okay. There's going to be a two-step process as well. Grabbing the data, doing something with it, but ultimately we have to pass the data back up, and that's called lifting state. And I know the question was asked on Tuesday, like, oh, they mentioned this lifting state concept, and we'll get to that. But as of right now, we need to add another event to the form. All right, so here's the input, and I'm going to add to that input. I'm going to do this. I'm going to split this because when you start to have many properties, best practice is after a while is to split them off on separate lines like this, okay? And I'm going to add one more. That's just kind of the best practice. When you have like 2 or 3, you kind of like 2 like this is fine. When you start having 3 or 4, seeing them on the horizontal can be harder to read than seeing them on the vertical. So I'm going to add an event, and that's going to be called on change. Okay, and we're going to follow this kind of same practice here, where we are going to say on change is equal to, and we're going to have the curly braces, right? Okay, so on change, it's going to equal, let's do this, and we'll do handle change. How about that? Boom. Okay. Now we're getting this error because handle change does not exist. And so we need to get a handle change, right? I'm going to go up here and do the same concept. Const handle change is equal to. Now, we don't need to pass any values to handle change. Okay, handle change is not going to need any values passed to it. Okay. What we are going to do here, though, handle change. Actually, no, handle change will. We need the E, and we need the E, and we need the E here. We actually do need it. Okay. The one thing that I kind of want to point out with the event is this. It is a synthetic event, but it also allows us to see, I'm just going to go here. It also allows us to see the target of the event, right? So if the target of the event is the inputs, then I'll know that once something is changed, the target was the input. And the target has a value as well. So the target will return back an input, and the inputs will have a value, okay? So let's go back here. Let's do that. Let's do this. Console log handle change, okay? And I'm going to do this, E dot target, okay? I just want to do E dot target. Here we know the handle submit is submitting a form. In this, I want to extend it to see what the target would be, okay? So I'm going to go here now. I'm going to clear this out. And I'm going to type a letter in here. Boink. All right. You see how it outputs the input, right? And if I just keep typing, if I say A, B, C, see how it keeps typing out the input? Okay. So every time we type, we see the input. Now watch this. What if I extend e.target and put e.target.value? Okay, let's see what happens then. I'm going to clear everything out, right? And I'm going to do, I don't know. Oh, well, that's pretty interesting, right? We can just grab the value of it. So now I know what the value is, right? Anything you put in, I now have the value to it. And that's important, okay? Now the question is, what do we do with that? Like the handle submit button is kind of detached from this. And essentially there's nothing in handle submit that tells it, hey, where is the final input being stored, right? Where is it? How do I grab it? I need to know where it is. Now, this is where the next thing, most important thing here, besides props, is the concept of state, okay? And state is a really, really big concept in React. And state, the best way that I can explain state is the information that your application knows about. And information changes. So the information that your application knows about changes its state at some point in time. Think of it like you, if you were to like wake up in a great mood, your state of mind is in a good mood, right? If you go to the store and you're waiting on the line and somebody's taking forever, I don't know, your state of mind might start not being so happy anymore, right? If somebody trips you by accident, steps on your hand, your state of mind is starting to change slowly from really happy to a little pissed off and angry, right? So what goes on in here changes, right? And we need a way, and in React, we need a way to keep track of what's in here and a way to update what's in there, okay? So we need something to hold on to the information and another tool to update the information, okay? Those are the two things that we need. Now, we're going to use, when we use state, we need to import something from React, okay? We need this additional thing to help us with using state here. The thing that we need to import is up here. Now, this is where the object deconstruction comes in handy. And you know, I mentioned the article. If you read the article, this might look familiar, but object deconstruction is this. Okay, I'm going to put a comma after React, and I'm going to put curly braces after that, and then I'm going to say use state, okay? And use state has the underline because we have to use it. Use state is declared, but never read, okay? So this type, this use state, I'm gonna make a note here because it's important. There's an older way to do React, which you saw as part of the tic-tac-toe. You saw the older way of doing React, and React has released something called hooks. Hooks were released in version 16.8, and they revolutionized, I don't know, maybe not revolution, that's a big word. They definitely changed the way we wrote React. And so when I teach React now, I teach it the new way. I don't teach it the old way because it takes a lot of time to do them both. Now, in this class, we will learn the old way only because we're gonna learn about classes. And I want you to understand how classes are used in normal JavaScript, but I didn't want to start React working with classes, because then you would be thinking about writing React in classes. your project would have started out in classes and you wouldn't have used the new version of React, or you would need to have refactored your old stuff into new stuff. I'd rather just set you up with the new stuff, okay? So hooks are a way to gain access to higher level elements in React. Just know that in this instance, use state is how we are able to set, define, and update state. Once again, I kind of describe state as state is the info your app is aware of, okay? The other thing with state is that state can exist in multiple components, okay? So think of it like this, the form. The form's its own thing, right? It's its own thing, its own little confined little space. View capture input, the form should be the only thing that knows about the input for now, responsible for capturing the input. And only when you make the decision to submit the form should something else happen. Until the submit happens, the form is happy to collect your information, okay? So what we need to do is define some state. Okay, so I'm going to go here, the very top of our little form function, and I'm going to say const. And this is another example of deconstruction. This up here, I'm going to put a note up here too, so you understand that the curly braces, right? Use state is a form of object deconstruction. And what I'm about to do here is going to be a form of array deconstruction. Okay, so I'm going to, what looks like I'm creating an array here. It's this kind of weird syntax. And I'm going to put in two things in here, input and set input. And that's going to equal use state, the thing that we created, we imported here, and I'm going to set it to empty text. Okay, so all this is really new. Brand spanking new. Okay, so let me just break down what's happening here and here so you get a better understanding of this in the world of ES6. Okay, I'm going to go here and I'm just going to create an object. Let me just do a really basic object. Let obj, look, I even have one here. It's going to equal to first job, right? Okay. Now I could do something like this. Let Joe, okay here, let Joe, let first equal to obj, okay? Now, if I type in first, look, first is Joe now, okay? What object deconstruction does is this. Apparently, it looks like you're creating a variable here, and what object deconstruction is going to do is it's going to deconstruct the object. It is going to look inside the object to see if it has a key of first. If it does, it returns the value, and it creates a variable called first set to the value that was stored in the object, okay? This same construct could have been done like this as well. We could have done it like, I don't know, let Joe equal to, right? You can do first. I'm going to do maybe first 2 or something, just so that we don't conflict. Obj dot first, okay? And first 2 is equal to Joe as well. So this was the old way of us doing it. This is the new way of doing it, okay? That's just the way it is. Object deconstruction allows us to take the values from objects and dynamically create variables of the same name, and we retrieve the values. So instead of doing it like this, we just now write it like this, just as new, okay? The same goes true for arrays. Let arrays equal to A and B, right? Okay. So I could say let bracket A, B, I'm creating variables, is going to be equal to array. Oh, is this not letting me do this? Invalid deconstruction argument. Oh, because B is missing. See B missing that? All right. Oh, invalid. What's going on here? At A is equal to B. Oh, I think I have to do it based on position. Hold on one second. Let me try this. Oh yeah, I have to do it like this. Nope. I don't think it's going to allow us to do that. Invalid deconstruction assignment target. Let A is equal to A0. It should have allowed me to do it. Okay. Let's jump back into React. I don't know why this is not working here right now.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
As a just like as a comment, is it okay to say that I don't like that? like it's a cool feature, but it's just like you're so used to everything in JavaScript being like on the left side, like it's just assigning a variable, and now it's like they're messing with that whole. You know what I mean? Like it's just like confusing. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I wonder sometimes who comes up with these things. You know, it's like.
It's new. Obviously, it's new, and they came out with this to help improve, right?
Yeah.
Let me just take a look. I'm going to go into the article. All right. I did ask you to read the deconstruction. I'm just going to take a look quickly at the array because off the top of my head, I only do it in one specific way. I almost never do it outside of this one way. So I'm just taking a look at their array destructuring, which I asked you to read, right? Yeah. So here, red, green. Yeah. That kind of should have worked. I feel like that should have worked where these positions, right? Oh, here we go. I think I know what I did. See, I put quotes around things, right? I put quotes around A and quotes around B when I try to create the variable. That's what broke it. Okay. So if I go back here to what we have, I could fix this by going back to what I had earlier, but getting rid of the quotes. I can't have the quotes. That's why. Because these are now variables. When you create a variable, you don't put quotes around the variable name. If it's a string, you put quotes around the string, but not around the variable name. There we go. Now A is equal to A. B is equal to B. Okay? So what we're doing is we're listening out of the array the values based on their position. Don't think like this is looking in and trying to get it based on its value. It's actually doing it based on its position. Okay? I could have done this in a different way. I could have done it like this. Just maybe it makes more sense like this. Maybe I want to do C and D, and now C is now A. Right? There's no A inside the array. There's no C and D inside the array. There's only A and B, and yet C is now equal to A because it does it based on position. Okay? Now, I know it's new. It's like one of these new things now, and we don't use, Simon, we don't use like the array destructuring is only used sparingly, and I've only seen it used in this way. I've only seen it used like this. I've never had to use it besides use state and a few other use type things in React. I haven't. Array object destruction, I see all the time. That's a super popular thing. You're going to use object destructuring probably 90% of the time, and array destructuring only in the context of React and this. Only because storing things in objects is more intuitive for us.
Mm-hmm.
Eliciting a key and getting a value is more intuitive than eliciting a position and getting a value, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why they opted to do it this way. They just did. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to write it like that. That's just it. This is actually in programming languages, this is called a tuple. T-U-P-L-E, a tuple. And other programming languages like Python also have tuples. Tuples are where you elicit the values out based on kind of their positions in arrays. That's really the best excuse I got. I can't defend or deny this position. It's like one of those, I can either, you know, confirm or deny such allegations. All I know is that's just the way it is, okay?
All right.
So now that we have state here, right? State is here, and we need to use state. That's what we need to do. We need to figure out a way to use the state. So this input, so let me just put here, input is our state right now, or is our state variable, okay? That contains our information. And set input is how we set that variable, okay? Or change it, right? Remember, it's state. State changes. If state changes, you need to update state. So we use this to variable to change it. I'm gonna actually put here to update it. How about that? Update it sounds better, okay? So now that we've done this, now we've set up state, we have to do one more thing to kind of get this thing working. Okay, so I'm gonna do two things. First, I'm gonna go down here and I am going to change or add, I'm gonna add a property here, and I'm gonna call this property value. Value is going to equal input, okay? Now, value, right? Value. Now this value is what you're gonna see here. Now one thing just happened. I want you to see what just happened. If I type now, nothing. Do you see anything in the form? Nothing's in the form because we set the form to an empty string of text. You see this? Input is an empty string of text, right? So if it's set to an empty string of text, how do I update this empty string of text, right?
Is it an empty string of text, or are we saying the input is a variable? Like, I'm confused about that.
Okay, so value right here is equal to the curly braces, right? And what's inside the curly braces?
I'm assuming it's input from the const up above, but I would assume that both of those are variables.
Okay, so input is a variable, and input is our state variable. It's the actual thought process. Like, how are you feeling? I'm feeling great. That's your state. Great is your state, right? If something happens, something changes your state, and then when I say, hey, how are you feeling? You're like, I'm not so great, right? Now your state changes. So that state change is input.
Okay.
You're either great or you're not great. The fact that something changed your state, well, there's something out there, an environmental element that changes it. That's the set input. The set input is going to be the thing that's like, somebody bumped me and now I'm no longer happy, right? That's the change, right?
I guess I'm confused because you said it was taking a string, and I'm like, where is it taking the string from?
Oh, this is the string right here. This defines, so I guess I should just add that to the use state in parens is used to define the initial state.
Okay, so you're basically saying that input and set input are strings.
Input
Empty
and set.
strings.
Oh, set input is a method. So I'm going to also add that here then, right? So set input is how we update the variable, is how you update it. And it's a method. It's a function. Let's put
And
it
we
that way.
know that because React Magic, or why do we know that?
Well, that's just how this thing is constructed. So you'll only know it if I explain it like that,
Okay.
right? You would never know that without me telling you what's happening here. Like, it's just one of those things. You'll never know it unless I tell you what's happening with it.
Hey, so Joe, to piggyback on that question, so set input is that's just like a method, a React method for setting like an input? Or,
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I want to add just one more thing here. These values could be called whatever you want. Okay. So input and set input are names I decided to use. You could have called it value and set value. You could have called it, pickles and update pickles. those names could be whatever you want them to be.
But we're not gonna end up defining those. Like, we're not gonna define a set input method in this file, right?
No, because set input you did by doing this.
Right. So, so under the hood, does that method have a name in React? Like,
oh yeah, I have no idea what's happening under the hood here. Like,
okay.
That's the React magic, you know?
So this line of code is something that we would see fairly often in React. However, it might say tacos and it might say burritos, but it's doing the same thing.
Yeah, and if it was tacos, you'd probably see set tacos.
Yeah, okay.
Right? If it was burritos, it would be set burritos. I'm giving you the standard syntax that's most likely used, but this is the new way of writing React, and you're going to see it everywhere. Like, if you start looking at new React in the last year and a half, via code sandboxes or whatnot, this is the syntax that people are using now. The minute people discover the new way, they drop the old way. Students even get mad at me in the day class when we teach them the old way, and then all of a sudden they learn the new way, and they're like, why didn't you just teach me that? The old way is so convoluted.
I have one more question, which might be dumb. But so we're setting this function or this line of code here that React knows to do React magic to, because we put use state up in the import statement, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
This is it.
And
right?
And I'm so sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
Sure.
It's strictly the syntax of React that is saying X comma set X as a part of like array deconstruction.
Exactly.
That is.
This is React doing its thing. Like,
this is basically the local cache, right? Of whatever is going on the page to know what state it's in versus like a Redux later.
Yeah. So this is like React also, what you just mentioned Redux, but Redux is like an advanced
It's a different
management tool that is outside of React. It's not a React tool. It's a tool for state management used in other applications. It's not solely used in React. It's predominantly spoken about in React.
Yeah, a lot of people use it in combination, right?
Yeah,
React,
they do. It is one of those tools that is used, but it's not solely for it. But it's managing state, right?
Right.
Right. We're so close. Let me finish it. I'll take the questions. Like, I get it. Like, I throw this out there and it's just like, sometimes my brain is like, oh, they're going to pick it up, but there's so much magic over here. You don't really know what's going on, right? That's like introducing the $ jQuery. Some people are like, what the hell is that? What's going on with that, right? You just like, just use it a few more times and you'll get the gist of it. So watch it happen, and then maybe it'll make more sense. So here's our value, and there's nothing in here because I'm not updating this value. This value is currently an empty string of text. Doesn't have anything, empty string of text, okay? We need to update that empty string of text. Where are we getting that value? We're getting that in handle change, right? Handle change has access to the value that's typed in, and we saw that, right? If I go here and I type in red, right? I see individual letters here. Individual letters being output now. And I don't see RED as one string. I see them as individual letters, okay? So watch this. Here's the magic. I'm going to call set input. I'm going to call that method input. And I'm going to give it e.target.value. Okay? It's the same thing that we did here. You know what the value is, and I'm going to write it to state. Okay? So now let's take a look. I'm going to test this out and just see. You see how I'm capturing the data now? Before, it was an empty string of text, and it was always an empty string of text. Didn't matter how many characters you typed. What happens now is this. When I type in a letter, React updates state. It executes this, right? That updates the value and input. Once the value and input is updated, React actually redraws this component. re-puts it back onto the screen. Okay, and this is how we know this happens. So watch. I'll just add a console log here and say console log and say this is form. Okay, form. We just know that that's coming from the form component. I'm going to go back up here. I'm going to refresh the page so we get rid of everything. Now you see how form was rendered once, right? Because you see the form, so that component must have been called. I'm going to clear out everything. Now watch. This is form. This is form. This is form. Okay? So in the world of React, every time you update state, you trigger the component to re-render itself. Okay? Now in the world of like,
theoretically be really expensive for processing power if you have a lot of form elements doing this at one time?
It is, but it isn't. It isn't because React creates another layer, this thing called the virtual DOM. And it manages the virtual DOM, and it only targets little things on the page that need to be updated. And it does it at such an efficient way, much more efficient than jQuery or plain JavaScript would have done it, that it's so performant that the way I just showed you is the way that forms are written in React. It's the accepted way because React is so performant. Really, it like elevated the state of like things happen, and it looks for like, that's the first thing I thought away. I mean, it was like, this just looks like a lot of work. Why don't you just wait till they submit it and then capture it? But for React, it's not a lot of work, in all honesty.
And that might be a good use case for if you're doing like validation as you go along.
Exactly. So the intent of this also is exactly what you just mentioned. Think of a password when the user's typing in each individual character, right? And you know how you have that little line that goes from red to yellow to green to be like, your password's getting more secure, right? Think of like this form that we're using here as the ability to, as you type in a character, you know, run some sort of function that's like, is it strong? No, not yet. It's still red. So you could just keep typing A, B, A, B, and you don't meet the requirements of an uppercase A. Does it contain a symbol, right? And so every character allows you to run some sort of evaluation, run it again, determine if it meets criteria. So this is how you do forms now, because I don't want you to submit an empty form. If it's an email, I want to confirm that there's an @ sign at some point in time, right? And I want to do it live. I don't want you to submit the form and then be like, I want to be like, hey, this thing isn't an email address. You can't leave it like that, right? And that's the immediacy of this thing, right? And that's why we write it like this. This is how we do a form in React, okay? There are other ways to do it, and I have taught it other ways, but this is kind of the default standard for forms in React, okay? And so you state every time updates, and it updates itself. It's really, really performant, and this is a really good way to do it, okay? All right, we haven't added anything, and that's just another layer. I can't go into that right now because I got to give you some practice with this, because this has just been me kind of leading the charge here with this lecture. So do we have any additional questions? Because these are really good questions. I think they're awesome. This is really new material. Up to this point, like, you've learned a lot of React. I have to be honest. There's been a lot of React, and this is the first time I think like we just hit the wall with something that was like, what is going on with this, right? It's brand new, and I get it. So,
hey, Joe, I got a question.
Sure.
I don't think it'll derail us, but so let's say you had another input on this form, right?
Mhm.
Would you?
There's two ways to do it, but I'm just going to answer your question really quickly.
Okay.
Input 2, set input 2. I wouldn't call it.
Okay, so you would do that. So the use state is not like for every element. Like you have to keep declaring it for each thing you want.
Well, you do and you don't, depending on your choice.
Okay.
I could have turned this into an object and say, you know, input, right? I could say something like input 1 is an empty string and input 2 is an empty string. Like I could have defined it like that if I wanted to.
Okay.
Right? I'm keeping it as simple as possible. Like we have one input, like we can get our heads around this, we can like extend it, but I don't want it. This value here that you said, it could be anything that you want. If it was a counter that you were keeping track of, like, you know, the clicking and it goes up one value at a time, I would have set this to 0 because we're adding numbers. You click, the numbers go up. You click, the numbers go up, right? That would have been 0. This is a string because we're capturing input, right? So
got it.
Just going to get rid of this. It could be an array too. You might want to push something into an array, right? Ultimately, that's what's going to be. See how we have our colors? Our colors were in an array of colors, right? So at some point in time, we are going to create state to hold our colors, okay? We didn't do that yet because I'm just trying to baby step everything to get us to where we need to get to, okay?
Cool.
So
really quick to summarize, like what version of React does this support?
16.8.
16 point.
Yeah, so React hooks, so just to make it clear, like React hooks 16.8, that's when it came out. The one with hooks, okay? That's the version, and that came out literally, I think it came out, when did it come out? I think it came out like a year and a half ago or something. I gotta be honest, I've been meaning to like study hooks for quite some time, and they came, so I don't know, February 2019. That's when he wrote the article. So maybe it was like just a year ago then. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought it was longer. Okay. All right. So let me give you, starter code for your to-do list. Once again, this is the starter code I'm using. It's 116. That's the date, just so I can separate what's going on. All right. Yeah, February 2019. Yeah, so February 2019. Okay. Here we go. I'm gonna Slack it out. I'll put you into groups, but the idea is to do the same thing with the form. Right? We did it with our form. You have a form. Can you replicate what we did in ours to that particular form? Okay? That's all you have to do. Replicate it, capture it. Right now, the data's there. Can you now capture that data using the technique that we just did? Okay? We'll put you in groups. Let's do breakout rooms. Manually. Okay, manually. I'm going to open them up. I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. And then we can do it. So, hold on. Okay, so I got a couple of rooms of 3 and one room of 4. I'm going to put a click on the thumbs up when you get it. We can see, but how long do you think it would take? Jackie, how long do you think it would take?
Not long at all. Maybe like 10 minutes most.
10 minutes? Okay. 10. So I'll put here, put the timer. I'll give you 50 minutes. We're going to be generous anytime. Always overestimate, Jackie. Overestimate on the project. Okay. I'll open this up. Let's go in your rooms. I have to put props here, right? Because we're accepting props. And I have to replace colors array here or precede it with props dot colors array. And it works. You see? All I've done, now I can get rid of this, watch. And it works. I didn't break anything. I'm adding state to the app with the intent of doing this. The reason why we're doing this is, I'm going to go back to the diagram, is because I need to get data from form up to app. I need to update the state in app so that it can pass it down to colorless, and then colorless can loop and do its thing. Okay? That's what we need to do. And that's what we just did. Right? I want you to do the same with your form. I want you to move the array of items from the to-do list and move that into app. Okay? So as of right now, if I could just even go back to the old one here, to-do list has your to-do arrays, right? I want you to move this, move it into app and create state in app. Do exactly what we just did. Okay, use what I did as a reference. I'm thinking that should take you between 5 and 10 minutes. I'm going to show what I have in app so you have an idea. It's not too much going on in app. Looks good. The number's going up. It's good. Not too shabby. What are we at? Like almost going on 10 minutes.
Hey Joe, so you have the diagram to and it's easy to understand, like moving it up and passing props down. In a complex application, how do developers understand the hierarchy?
You need to draw it out.
Okay. So you essentially need to look at what the import is doing and how it's being imported, and that should give you an idea.
Yeah. Now think of it like a really complex business process. You know how they draw out the process flow in diagrams, like Visio or something like that. Think of it like that. If you were to look at a really complex business process, it takes you a moment to sit back and really realize what's happening, and right? We're building out an application. There's states of data, things are being updated, things are being passed around. And so we need a diagram to really tell us what's happening, especially if you come on board and you're new. You don't know the structure of the application. All you see are components. You don't know who's getting what from where, right? So you would need something to visualize that process. And so this really helps me visualize it so that I know what's getting passed where. I know that this color list item can never send data to form, and these two can never talk to each other directly. They have to do through a third party. Kaylin, just slack me your pen and we'll take a look at it. So in order for data to get passed, we'd have to go all the way up and pass all the way down. Now, with advanced tools, and React has some advanced features, I can get data passed down to here. I still have to pass it up. I still have to get it up here, but I can get data from here to here without going through here. There's like another tool that allows me to pass it all the way down, and those elements that need it, just grab a handle on it, okay? Or like Mauro mentioned, this concept of Redux, which is a state management tool where state would be right here. State would be outside of the React app, and the React app components would just lock into it and pull what they need, okay? That's more advanced, but in a large advanced application, we're gonna need to rethink this. Like this wouldn't suffice in a large, complex, dynamic application. Kaylin, so let's take a look. I'm going to take a look at Kaylin's having some issues. So let me just see if we can figure out what's happening here based on the errors. All right. So I see here it says to-do list equals use state, and this looks like the error. So I'm going to go to app because that's clearly where it is, right? Here's app. And what happened is, okay, I don't believe you imported use state here, right? So the error message is use state is not defined. Like if I highlight this, that's the error message. I'm going to see if I can capture the error message. That's the error message. So anytime something is not defined, that means you didn't need to import. Yeah, and Alex just mentioned that too, right? You need to import it. So you would just need to come up here and first use state, and we should get back as long as everything else is working. If I refresh this, we should see the thing working. We should see if this works now. We should see. There we go. Now your to-do list works. Okay. And I'm assuming app has all the to-dos and you pass them down, right? So that's pretty easy, right? You do it. I'm gonna take yours, and yours becomes mine. right? So I'm going to take yours. Here we go. Use states. Let me use states. So I'm importing state. I'm going to pass this down, right? So in this to-do list, it's called to-dos array. So I'm going to kind of keep this same naming convention here. To-dos array is equal to, I wouldn't call this just to-do. I would call it to-dos because it's plural, because there's more than one in there. So I'm going to call it to-dos. And if I go to to-do list, I don't need this anymore, so I can get rid of that because we've already moved it. And this, I would put props here because we're passing props. And this becomes props dots with 1p dot to-dos. And now we pass it down. And now we have our solution for this. Okay? And we pass it. Now we don't have time to lift up state. Like that's going to take some more time. So we're going to have to wait till Tuesday to do that. But this was really about state. I wanted you to understand state and what state's doing and how we can pass it down. Now we didn't update state in app. We just kind of put it there. We didn't update it yet, but we will. Next class we'll update state. Doing events and state, just this alone, that's a lot to cover in regards to our to-do list, okay? Do you have any questions? I'll take some questions and I'll go over the homework. Okay, this is a pretty deep class. There's a lot today. But this is key to you thinking about your application, okay? We really need to get through this so you can start thinking about where should I put my data? I'm gonna pass things down. Now you know how to capture a form. If you want users to submit something, you can. All right, I saw that, what? Okay. Seeing something, I don't see, oh, there, Mauro. You know, Mauro, your image just had your face. So I didn't even see that you were there. I was like, what happened to Mauro? He disappeared.
Oh no, he made an exploding head gesture when you said the class was tough.
Oh, that was it. Yeah. It's a lot. Like, it's too much. All right. Let me show you what's for homework. Okay. I want to make it as easy as possible. You did learn state. So all I want you to do is take this jQuery city thing that you mastered, right? Oh, this one doesn't even click. All right, I got to get you the solution. But take the jQuery one where we clicked on these and they updated, and use that to create a React app where you have state and click events, right? So now you have click events. You can add events to each one of these buttons. And by adding events to the button, you should be able to update this element. Okay?
Question. I know that we set up React in Code Sandbox, but have we done it in CodePen?
Oh, you're not doing it in CodePen. You are going to do it in a Code Sandbox. I'm only referencing this as what I wanted to do is actually just show you like one of the working solutions. So let me just take a look at one of the working solutions here. Let's see, carries on. Yeah. I just want you to take the functionality of it, right? So you already know how to import HTML, right? You already know about kind of migrating over HTML, correct? Okay. The logic here to flip it, this is just jQuery. You're not going to be really using the jQuery here. All you would do is attach an event listener to these buttons, right? For the sake of simplicity, you can have one main app component. You don't have to split them up into multiple components because we haven't lifted state. So if you keep everything in one large app component where these elements are being rendered and this is being rendered, then state is in the main component. All you have to do is make a decision that when you click on this, you update the thing that says this is what big image should be. And then the minute the value that holds the big image changes, that's when this image would get the new URL, right? because that's what's really happening. You click on this and you immediately grab its HTML value, right? Its source attribute, its image source, and then you assign it to this. That was the logic here, okay? Here's our images, right? And then when you click on it, where's the click event? I'm just looking at someone's solution here. So is there a click event? Click event? Where's the click event? Somewhere here, right? Swap, swap, swap. Interesting. I'm not seeing click. On click, you see it?
It's on line 24.
Oh, right here. Yeah, all right. So here's the click event. There's a click event, and when you do that, you grab the thing, you grab its source, and then you assign it, right? So you would do the same thing. I mean, I just pulled it from the homework. If you did it, then you have your solution, right? This is just one person's solution. I'm only showing you the solution because it does the thing that I want you to do it. I don't care about this. This isn't really important. Like the JavaScript that's doing it, not necessarily important. But can you create the structure first? Can you at least create that HTML? All right, awesome, right? This exercise was also in commenting out. Remember this one? This was create the object that has the things. So this one, we commented it out, and then you created, where's the thing? You created the object that had, I think I collapsed it, right? I collapsed it? Here. This array has the images, right? I mean, they're grabbing the images there, but you really should have the full image, okay? And with that, you should be able to render all these pieces of information, right? Okay. I don't think it's going to be as hard as you think.
Are you going to update the starter file with instructions so that we will remember a couple days from now?
Sure, sure. I'll put something in the, I'll put it in, let me see, I'll put it in the homework. I'll put the instructions there. And I'll start there, and then I can copy and paste them over to that. The only other thing that I had here, but that was the bonus, would be the traffic light. Now the traffic light is already kind of in here, and what you would need to do with the traffic light is if I click on stop, change that to be red. If I click on slow, change this to be yellow, but get rid of the red and get rid of the green. So the question would be, which one do you think is easier? Hands up for like stoplights. You think that might be easier? Or clicking on the images? Yeah, I'm thinking the images. This just takes a little bit more logic. To be honest, this requires a bit more thinking it through. The other one is like I click on an image and the single thing changes, right? In this instance, I click on a thing, one thing changes, but the other two things also need to be managed as well, right? So it's more thinking, right? So if anything, I can take the jQuery images, move it over into here, and at least just give you the HTML structure so you can have that, and then you can kind of work with it with a single component. So if you give me till like tomorrow, I'll take the jQuery, move it over into a code sandbox, add a few instructions so that I can get you started on it, okay? But if you're ambitious, you want to spin up your own, I can't stop your ambition. All right. All right. But I can end the class. I feel like everyone's had it. And like, damn, this is crazy. This JavaScript stuff is crazy. You can see why people get paid a lot of money to do React. React is like, you can get paid really good money to be a high-end React developer. It does take a lot, okay? So with that in mind, last thing I always ask for is exit tickets. So exit tickets, and then you are on your way. It's like so much feedback today. And I will work on city pics. Maybe I have it already. Oh, look, I got city pics. Didn't know I had it. All right. So this one renders every day. Boop, 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 boop.